Welcome back to another video. Today we are discussing why the Aston Martin V8 Vantage is fundamentally a flawed car and, to be honest, is an overrated car for people to buy today. Now, I know how YouTube goes down. These kinds of videos get a lot of dislikes on YouTube, and I'll tell you the reason why, which is because for some weird reason, I think I do this too, people search for cars on YouTube that they already own, and then they watch the reviews hoping that the people are going to say nice things about these cars, and then they don't hear what they want to hear and they hit the dislike button. And there is more of that than there is of people searching for the cars that are prospective buyers. So that clears that up, and let's give those people the stage for the beginning of this video. Let's talk about what is good about the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, because I took to the forums, I did a lot of research beforehand and before driving one to find out what is good about the V8 Vantage. Why is it so popular, and why, when you ask for car recommendations, does this car come up? Because it's an incredibly cheap car. You can get them from anywhere between 25 grand to 70 grand, which I'd say I don't know many exact models of cars where the range is that high in terms of price. So when you ask people what's so good about the car, tell me why you own an Aston Martin V8 Vantage, and they always say that it makes an incredible noise, it's hand built, it's an Aston Martin, and that brand appeal, the fact that you've got an Aston Martin on the drive or in your garage, is something incredibly special. And it has incredible interior. The interior for the era and for the price point is probably the best car in its range. That leather is incredible, and some people say that the interior is dated on that car. I don't think it has at all. I think it still looks incredible, especially if you get those updated seats, which I believe they updated the seats from around 2007, 2008 onwards, and they just look incredible. So they'll also tell you it's a reliable car. And then other people will tell you that it's not a reliable car. So before I get into that, those are what you will hear from Aston Martin owners. They will tell you those things. It's hand built, it's an Aston Martin, it makes an incredible noise, and it's got incredible interior. Those are the big selling points of the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. And as I said before, some people will tell you it's reliable, and some people will tell you it's not reliable. So what is it? Why is it that some people are saying it's the worst car I've ever had in terms of reliability? And why are some people saying it's the most reliable car I've ever owned in comparison to other cars? And I can tell you the answer, which is that it is a bulletproof engine. The power unit in the V8 Vantage is actually bomb-proof. It is a naturally aspirated, pretty simple, straightforward car that there isn't much to go wrong on it, and these cars can do hundreds of thousands of miles with these engines without them blowing up, without any huge catastrophic failures. I mean, compare that to the Porsche 911, the 997 of that era. Those engines were blowing up. If you go onto Auto Trader right now and search for the keyword under a 997 Porsche, rebuilt or rebuild, for engine rebuild as the keyword, you will see right now of filming this is about 16 results, and I imagine you can do that test right now on Auto Trader and have a look yourself, because so many of them would just blow up. But the Aston Martin V8 Vantage doesn't do that. So why do people say that it is unreliable? And the answer for that is simply because of the cost of parts, of repairing them. Because what the Aston Martin have not supported their customers in terms of available parts, nor have there been any third-party companies who have started supplying third-party parts to replace the potential Aston Martin parts, and they are so expensive from a main dealer or to be supplied from Aston Martin. And therefore, when you're an owner of the Aston Martin V8 Vantage and something simple goes wrong on the car, like a normal car would cost about 50 quid to get it fixed, for the Aston Martin it can cost £700 to £1,000 to get the same repair fixed. It's not necessarily the labour rates. The labour rates aren't too bad. The servicing costs of main dealers at Aston Martin aren't too bad. It's the price of parts that is making it so expensive. So what happens is that people who would have needed a 50 quid repair ends up spending 700 quid, and it goes into that category of that was a big bill, or that was a significant bill. So your car may have things go wrong with it maybe 3 to 4 times over the course of a year, and it costs you like 50 to 100 quid to get it sorted. And because it isn't that much, you don't chalk it up to reliability. You just say, oh, something went wrong and it cost me 100 quid. For example, it could be something as simple as a wheel speed sensor, and those little things you don't count towards the reliability of the car. But with an Aston Martin, because it's so expensive, because it really hurts your bank account, you chalk it up to being a major repair. So that ends up leaving a bad taste in owners' mouths when it comes to selling it, and they look at how much they spent on that car and then they conclude it was an unreliable car. And yes, I know that there are some shared parts with other cars. So for example, the keys from a Volvo, the air conditioning filter, that is actually from a Mazda RX-8. I know that you can go and source different parts from different cars, and there's a lot of overlap, which can save you some money. But as an owner, I don't want to have to do that to be able to repair my car. I want to be able to just go to a specialist or an Aston Martin main dealer and say, just fix it, I'll pay the 100 quid. So to give you an example of some costs, here's just a few that I pulled from the internet. Some are in pounds, some are in dollars. You've got the flasher relayer on a regular car, that's $38. On an Aston Martin, it's $296, almost $300. Basically 8 times the price. A tire inflator, which I know is not part of the car, but to give you an idea, that is £21 for something on Amazon. An Aston Martin dealer will sell you that for £160. You've got the amplifier for the sound system, £2,800 plus VAT. If the nav unit breaks, that's £3,000 plus VAT. And then front springs, just a couple of springs for the front of the car for repair is £700. For any regular car, including someone left an example on the case that I read, that a Ferrari 360 Modena is £80 for that same repair. An Audi TT is £60 for that same repair. £700 for the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. And that is why it has this reputation for being unreliable. Because yes, it's a reliable car in theory, but when the small things go wrong, it is going to feel like an unreliable car, and the cost of ownership is going to be as if it is an unreliable car. And to list a few things that people say go wrong regularly on these cars. The first one, you've got the clutch. I'm going to write this one off. The clutch is a myth. People say that the Aston Martin clutch for the manual gearbox was basically made of chocolate, and it lasted about 10,000 miles until it needed replacing. By the way, clutch is about $3,500, anywhere between 2,800 to $3,500 for a replacement clutch. But owners have said that these clutches can last up to 60,000 miles. It just depends on how you drive them, and unfortunately the car got a bit of a myth for needing new clutches regularly. So after my research, the clutch is fine. Don't worry about it. It's just like any other car. Quite expensive to replace, but still. The rear lights tend to get water and condensation trapped in them, so they are incredibly expensive to replace as well. I think it's about £1,500 per unit, so don't quote me on that, but it's around that price. You've got the front headlights where the unit itself fails and the front LEDs fail, and that is another £1,500 fix, and that was a design flaw for about the first 8 years of the car's production. You've also got the electrics as well. People have had terrible trouble with the central locking system. There was corrosion specifically around the door handles and the front of the car, so you can get a lot of bubbling underneath the paint. And finally, speaking of the paint, people say that it is pretty much made of butter. It will get stone chips so heavily, get marked, and it will need a respray almost guaranteed after about 10 to 15 years. So that's the reliability of the car out the way. But what if you have the money to endure all of that reliability? What if you don't care and you will just get it repaired and money is no object? Well, it is still a flawed car. It still has so many issues, and from my personal experience of driving one, it is a bit of a dog to drive. But owners don't really want to tell you that because they don't want to depreciate their own car. People who put reviews online of the car are going to say it's fantastic because they want to be invited to the Aston Martin press event again and be able to cover it. Also, it kind of ends up being like, this happens a lot in the YouTube space, I think. It ends up being like the Emperor's New Clothes, where everyone is hailing this car. They don't want to be the one guy who kind of didn't like it. So what ends up happening is you get a ton of incredibly positive reviews. So for those who still want to go and buy one, here's some flaws of the car. And the first one is it is actually incredibly underpowered. It, especially that 4.3 litre engine, it was horrendous. It is flat. You have to rev it incredibly hard to actually get anywhere. And people say, well, it's all part of it, revving the engine out. But to be honest, that gets annoying and you kind of feel like that you are driving a bus at times, where you're just trying to carry all of this weight with a 4.3 litre engine and only 380 brake horsepower. It kind of gets a bit tiring. The 4.7 litre engine was a lot better, I will give it that, but still it did feel like it needed a lot more power depending on how this car was categorized. People said it was the sports car of the Aston Martin V8 Aston Martin range, and the DB9 was the GT car, but I think this car should have also been classed as a two-seater GT car rather than being described as a sports car, which is what it was. The next thing is, because of that weight, the car gets 15 miles per gallon. 15 miles per gallon, which, okay, I understand, it's an Aston, it's a V8, but you saw on one of my other videos, the SLK55, which is a 5.5 litre V8, still managed to get 30 to 33 miles per gallon, which is, okay, it's incredible, but that's down to the weight of the car. And Aston put so much into this car, it ended up weighing it down, and then you've got a gas guzzling V8 drinking all of the fuel, and it ends up adding to those running costs. And after a while, will just get you down. Again, if you can afford that and you don't mind stopping at filling stations regularly, that's fine. And also, the car is so heavy that it can't be a sports car because it did not go around corners. I was incredibly disappointed with how slowly you had to take the corners because the car just could not grip due to all of that weight. The next one is, I've mentioned the weight of the car, but also the clutch is heavy. If you've done your research, you probably know this already. The clutch of the car is horrible, especially if you're going to be using the car on a regular basis. And people will tell you, oh, it's just a sporty drive and that's just the way the car is. But the first time you get stuck in traffic, your left leg is going to be so tired, you're going to absolutely hate the car. The clutch is so heavy that it's not an enjoyable drive and it's not a sporty drive. And again, it's bringing the car back into describing it as a sports car instead of being a GT car. So you've got a GT car's characteristics in terms of it's big, it's heavy, it's powerful, it's quite a big lazy V8, it's amazing on runs on the motorway, but it's very uncomfortable to drive every day because of that clutch. And the steering was good. It did have a lot of feel, but it certainly wasn't sharp. So it definitely wasn't sports car steering. It was a lot more GT car steering. So the clutch also had a very high biting point, which meant that it was like driving what can only be described as like a 1960s Mustang, in that every time you changed gear, it was like a full body movement. It was very tiring and it was fun at first, but when you are using the car on a regular basis, after about 20 minutes, it got very boring, especially trying to drive the car quickly. And I urge you to go and watch some POV or point of view videos of people driving a manual Aston Martin V8 Vantage, and you will see what I mean. It is a very difficult car to drive and it doesn't really look that enjoyable. Especially if you're driving fast, you are constantly wrestling with this car instead of feeling like you are one with the car. And finally, the technology in the car wasn't great. The infotainment system was horrible. I think it's out of a Volvo at that period. They went on to use the Mercedes system in the next generation, but yeah, that was horrible. Sound system was pretty good, but apart from that, it's really bad. You can retrofit things like Apple CarPlay, things like that, but again, there are certain people who will tell you that all of these flaws can be replaced and make it a perfect car. You can get Apple CarPlay, or for the heavy clutch, you can go and get the Bamford Rose double flywheel, which makes the clutch a lot lighter and more enjoyable to drive and feels more like a sports car. And to me, that doesn't make any sense. Why would, if the clutch was meant to be like that, Aston would have changed it in a later generation. They made this car from like 2004 all the way to 2017. So they kept that same style of clutch, and then they brought out an update which you could get installed where it was the double flywheel from the V12 version, and that was lighter and it was a better clutch. And I don't know why Aston Martin didn't change that clutch and update it during the product life cycle, but for some reason or another they decided to stick with this horrible high biting point heavy clutch, which just to me ruined the car. And I'm not even going to get into the automatic sport shift gearbox. There's plenty content on that. So for me, I was bitterly disappointed with the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, and people are saying that this car is going to appreciate in value, but to me it's not a desirable enough car to own. And there was a lot of them made, and there's always a lot of them for sale, and as long as that is happening, then the prices aren't going to go up. They've still got a long way to go and to come down. Have a look at where those early DB7s are now, and that will give you an idea of how far the Aston Martin V8 Vantage has to go, because the DB7 was a lot more of a special car and it should be on its way up by now as well. So that gives you much of an indication. So thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. I hope if you're considering buying a V8 Vantage that you have been able to learn something from this video and take all of these things into consideration before you buy. And I expect dislikes and negative comments on this video. That's okay. That's YouTube. That's what happens when you decide to go negative on cars that people own. If you are in the market for a car and you want a bit of fun, then drop your criteria down below in the comments. Say what your budget is, what you're looking for in a car, and anything in particular that you're looking for in that car. And I will comment with my best suggestion of which car you should buy based on your criteria. So subscribe if you're not already, drop it a like to try and balance out those dislikes, and I'll see you in the next video.